Today's video is going to be really different than my usual thrifting vlog videos because today we're going to be talking about the pros and the cons of selling in a brick and mortar store, selling at an antique booth, selling online versus selling at vintage flea markets. So I just want to get this point across. This is by no means the Bible of pros and cons of any of these type of venues. This is just my own personal opinion, my own personal experience, and you may have a different experience, and I would love to hear that in the comments. You know, just off the bat, I want to say that, you know, you may love vintage and antiques, and you may have a lot of people that you know that do too, but we all have different personalities. And so not all of these platforms are suitable to every personality. And that's kind of the interesting thing that I have found. So before you jump into a new venue or any venue, if you haven't started selling vintage yet, really think about like what would be best suited to you personally, for your personality, as well as for your lifestyle, and as well as for your financial capability, your financial investment that you're willing to make. Let's start with a brick and mortar store. So if you don't know what brick and mortar means, this is just a physical store in a physical location with regular hours. And let's just go over the pros about owning a brick and mortar store. So number one, you know, you get to be the boss, right? So you get to set your own policies about everything, your hours, your return policy. You get to, you know, if you're a creative person and you love marketing and merchandising, then this is a great option for you. And then oftentimes you're going to have way more space, right, than you would at an antique booth, and even potentially storage space. The couple of things that I really enjoy about having a brick and mortar is I love merchandising. That is a huge passion of mine. I love creating window displays and floor displays. And then I do also really enjoy the interaction with customers and being part of a community. So that is really gratifying to me. I mean, obviously that's not the number one thing, but it definitely adds to the joy of owning a brick and mortar. The other great thing about choosing to have a brick and mortar is that you get to decide the location of your store. And my number one recommendation is put the location before the price of the rent, because it doesn't matter how low your rent is. If there is no traffic, then it doesn't matter if the rent is low. You're not going to make maybe even enough money to actually make it a going concern. So if you're thinking of a location, you know, go there different times during the day, at night, on weekends. Talk to other store owners that are near you. So let's talk about the cons of having a brick and mortar store. Again, on the top of the list is location. If you wind up with a bad location, then it doesn't matter how low your rent is or how big your space is, unless you're willing to invest a tremendous amount of money in advertising in order to drive destination traffic to you. It may very well be a struggle to keep the doors open. So that is a con. The other con is there is definitely some high overhead in owning a brick and mortar store. Again, if you choose a great location, the rent is going to be higher. And then unless you want to work every single day, which is another con of owning a brick and mortar, like you are tied to that store, or you have to pay for employees. So you definitely have to make an investment and have some money in the bank if you're going to open a brick and mortar store. The other con is it is seasonal, at least in our area. If the sun is out, people are out. If it's raining and snowing, people do not come to the store. Just like retail in general, our busiest time is during the summer, during holidays. For every rainy day we have, our sales go down. So you have to be able to weather those low periods throughout the year. And another con I want to tell you about is taxes. So unless you are really good at bookkeeping and you can figure out how to remit the state sales tax, if your state actually requires you to collect sales tax, you have to remit sales tax to the state. So another expense that you need to keep in mind is the build out if you're going to open a store. So, you know, you may find a location that needs absolutely nothing. It's perfect the way you want it. Maybe even the fixtures come with it, but keep in mind that there are expenses right off the bat to the infrastructure of your potential store. But also try to do it as fast as possible because you're paying rent. And although you can also negotiate a lot of times like one free month while you build out your location. So here's a couple of recommendations for a brick and mortar store. Number one, I would totally use the Square Reader, which is so simple to use. It gives you great reporting. It also tells you exactly what you collected in tax. If your state does require remittance of sales tax, it will give you a report on that. And I've never used the payroll part, but it does have payroll. And then going to payroll, what I do use is Gusto, Gusto. It's a great payroll system. They take care of filing everything that needs to be filed for your employees. There is a monthly fee per employee, but it is well worth it. And then they can clock in and clock out through Gusto. So it also tracks their hours. So it is a great system and it's worth every penny. So that is one thing I never have to worry about. So let's talk about online selling. Let's talk about the pros first. Number one, you have flexible hours. You can list whenever you want, morning, night, whatever, in the middle of the night, on weekends, when the kids are in school, whenever you want it. It lends itself to complete flexibility. The other great thing about it is that the platforms, basically, if your state does require sales tax to be paid, they handle all of that. They handle all of it and they give you reports. So you have reports. You do have to claim that income if it's over $600 to the IRS as personal income. Another thing I really love about selling online is your marketplace is literally the whole world. So you have this immense marketplace of people that want to buy your stuff. Online, I can ask actual market pricing on all my stuff and I will get it. I never want to be the highest price and I definitely don't want to be the lowest price. So I kind of always shoot for the middle, but that is an incredible thing that now it doesn't matter where you're at. Because you can list whenever you want, you have more time for sourcing. Now you got to be careful not to create a death pile. Lots of resellers have them, right? but it does allow you to go out and source. Online selling isn't weather related, isn't location related, and it is to me, it is the one way I sell that has the least amount of overhead. As you steadily list, steadily increase the amount of items that you have online, you will start to see like very consistent sales. And even though you post 10 new things this week, not only do you get rewarded by the algorithms, but a lot of times it will spur those online platforms to show your older items. So I'm always excited to list items when I know I can sell items that I listed like a year and a half ago, right? So that's, the algorithms are kind of funky at times, but they reward consistent listers. So list consistently. The more you list across the week, the better. So let's talk about the cons of online selling. Number one, you have to be a self-starter. So if that is not in your character, this may not be a way to go for you, but you have to self-start. You have to get yourself ready and excited to list. It is very labor intensive. I'm going to say of all the platforms that I sell on, all the different ways that I sell, selling online to me feels like the most labor intensive way to make a living. Although the rewards also tend to be very, very much correlated to the amount of effort and time you put into it. But there's nobody standing behind you. There's like no customers at your door, right, telling you that you have to do this. So you must be a self-starter. So not only does it require you to be on the computer for long periods of time, but this is more of what they call a long tail business, which means that if you are just starting today, it's going to take a while, because it takes a while to actually build up enough inventory online and then to actually get the algorithms to start favoring you. So, Etsy and eBay especially play favorites. You must have patience. The other con is you have to have enough space for your inventory. Where are you going to put it, right? How are you going to organize it? A pro tip is start with a good organizational system right off the bat. It takes space. Doesn't mean that you can't be a reseller. Maybe you only sell really tiny items. I mean, I sell tiny items and they can make just as much money as a big item, and they're easier to ship. But it does mean that you have to have some dedicated space. The other thing is you have to have space for all the boxes and all the packaging materials that you have to have. And I am like constantly sourcing boxes. So, that to me is kind of a con. I'm constantly having to look for boxes, look for bubble wrap. Things can break in shipping. That's another con. Although once you get really good at this, you'll know how much wrapping, how much bubble wrap you need. And then, you are going to sit on hundreds and hundreds of items. So you do have to have the financial capacity to continually invest in your online business. So this is not like a get rich quick scheme or like make money while you sleep kind of business. It does require an extreme amount of dedication. Another kind of con of, and I'm not going to say it's a con, I'm going to say it's just part of what you need to do is you need to get to know the different platforms, and you also need to understand their commission and fees. So the other thing is you need to get good at taking pictures. So you need to have a lighting system or some I don't even use a lighting system. I just use natural light, but you have to get really good at taking amazing pictures, because most people will not read the descriptions, although you should be very descriptive, especially if there's, any damage to the item that they need to know about. But, that takes some time and takes some practice, but it is well worth it because it will make the difference in your online selling business if you learn how to take really good pictures. There are multiple free applications online and on your app in your phone that you can use to edit pictures. Like one that I really love is Snapseed, which allows you to crop and lighten, enlarge. There's also a third-party service that's actually an extension on your computer called List Perfectly. So basically, List Perfectly, you create your ad on List Perfectly and the pictures, and then you just click on which sites you want to send that ad to. You click on there, and then all of your sites, your online selling platforms pop up. You have to be logged into them for them to pop up, but then you just add the additional details that are for that particular platform, and then you can publish it. And then now you have your one ad on multiple platforms, and then when you go to sell the item, you just click sell and it pulls them all up and it ends that online listing for you. So it has really been a game changer. My favorite platform is Etsy, although in the last quarter I made more money on eBay, and so now it's kind of like eBay, Etsy, and then I happen to really like Facebook Marketplace. And if you're a new seller, I recommend Facebook Marketplace because they don't play favorites there. The newest items go to the top of the list. Let's talk about the pros of having an antique booth. So antique booths are a great way to sell vintage when you still have a full-time job. So because you could do them part-time in your spare time, right? And what's great about it is the mall typically will still be open 7 days a week, which is awesome. And if they have some late hour days, then you can go and basically fill your space during the evenings if you have a day job. The other thing that's a great pro for antique booths is the fact that you don't have a whole store you're sourcing for. You're only sourcing for a smaller space. And so it's much easier to fill up a smaller space. And you can also, if you're a creative person, you love to merchandise, it's a great outlet for that creative part of you. And it's great to be able to pick a theme and go with that theme and merchandise your space the way that you really would love to. Your personality should come out in your space. Most malls have an existing customer base. So when you go into an existing mall, you're already going to be able to take advantage of that existing customer base, which is great. I would still recommend doing social media for yourself, and hopefully the other antique booths owners also are doing social media, because that will tend to drive sales into the mall. If your state does require sales tax, malls will actually remit that on your behalf, because they can get in trouble if you don't pay it. So typically they will pay the sales tax on your behalf and then cut you the difference after rent and commission. malls can also tend to be in high traffic areas, right? Where you may not ever be able to afford your own brick and mortar, but you can have a space within the mall. So the other thing that I think is great about antique malls, and if you are new to this, make sure you ask them if there's somebody to help you unload heavy items. The one great thing about taking furniture to the malls is there's always somebody there that can help me unload furniture into my space. And just like with a brick and mortar, selling 1 or 2 pieces of furniture a month totally makes the rent, right? And even some extra money from it. So let's talk about the downsides of having a booth in an antique mall. So number one, the space can be really little, and that can become challenging. And then you have inventory that starts to get stale, right? That mall may not be in the best spot, and maybe it's old, sad, and tired, and their customer base has gone away, or maybe it never had a good customer base. And so, it's not generating enough traffic for you to have a healthy check from your space every month. Antique malls, you pay rent and you pay a commission, and you really need to think about, is the items that I bring in, are they going to generate enough revenue to pay the rent, pay the commission, and then make enough money for this to be worth my while? Just a couple pro tips for antique booths. I think my number one tip is to get the biggest space that you can afford. So if you can afford a big space, get it. Because I guarantee you will have it filled up in no time. Another pro tip is stack it high and stack it wide, but don't have stuff on the floor. I mean, I am guilty of that at the moment because I'm running out of space, but it's always best to have shelving as high as you can get it, have as much stuff as you could fit in your space. My opinion has always been like, the more you could put in your space where you can still walk around and not trip on stuff on the floor, the better. And so buy shelving, right, that has a lot of shelves or furniture that you can sell. Yes, they're going to have to clear everything out of that piece of furniture, but that's worth it. If I sell a hutch for $500, $700, that's fine. I'll find another one and put it in there. The other thing is, I am really thinking the best for shelving that you're not selling, try to get shelving where you could see the back, so you could see, doesn't have a back on it. For some reason, those shelving units that have like wood backing, to me, they seem dark and cramped, and the items really don't stand out on them. Look for shelving that's very open, right? That's very open, tall shelves, wide, because I think your items will really stand out. So I want to give, it's really more of an honorary mention on vintage flea markets. And so let me just go through that really quickly. So the number one thing I think that's a pro on these vintage markets is, you can pick and choose which markets you want to do, right? What's great is I can say, oh, I want to do one in March. And then, I'll just shop for that market. I don't need a ton of stuff. Then you go and you have thousands of people that walk by. So you have, instant traffic. The markets typically always do a great job advertising, so lots of people show up, which is great. You can find markets that really fit what you sell, but that is a great way to go. The markets are a ton of fun, but they're very, very intense, very labor intense, because so much has to be done in such a short period. And for the big markets, you know, when you have tens of thousands of people coming, you want to have a lot of inventory, right? So a lot of people that do the big markets, they start shopping like months and months ahead of time, and then they start stockpiling all this stuff, right? And a lot of people come with 3-4 people to help them get this set up. And then the con is that once you're done, you have to pack up all the leftovers and take them home. And I think that is like the biggest con of like doing one of those shows. But if you're up for the challenge, I would highly recommend them because they are a lot of fun. Really quick, let's talk about some hot items that I think you should be on the lookout, whether you sell at a market, whether you sell online, whether you have a brick and mortar store, but textiles are hot. If you're into boho, there's wonderful Indian textiles. I love canthas. They're Indian bedspreads. Right now you can buy 10 of them on Amazon from an Indian shop out of India. And then candlesticks are hot. Anything that has mushrooms or daisies are hot. Beautiful framed art, totally hot. Stoneware, pottery, like heavy earthenware pottery and earthenware planters, hot. Even in this day and age, salt and pepper shakers are really popular, so I always pick them up if they're kitschy or unusual. So they are always great sellers. Anything brass is really hot. Small lamps, like little desk lamps, right? Like those are great. And maybe not for online selling, although you can sell furniture online and you ship through UShip, which that's a whole nother video. But for the other venues, small pieces of furniture, like see the plant stand, any kind of like plant stands are amazing. They're great sellers, right? Any little items like side tables, shelves, like little bookshelves, little hallway tables, those are really popular and we sell a lot of those. You know, in the springtime, I have even potted up like real plants in unusual or fun thrifted planters, and those have all sold. So that's a great idea, and those are great to sell at like, you know, vintage flea markets, at your brick and mortar, or even at an antique mall. If you go every week and you can water the little pots, why not? Mirrors, wow, they are super hot. I cannot keep a gold gilded mirror in one of my antique malls. They just fly off the wall, and as well as like any other kind of unusual mirrors do very well. I hope this video was of help to you, even if it's in a small way. Obviously, there's so many details behind selling on any particular platform or venue, and I'm always available for questions. My information is down below in the link tree. And otherwise, if you get a chance to get out and do some thrifting, I certainly hope the thrifting gods will be with you and you find some fabulous stuff. And otherwise, I will see you on the next video.